Hi, my name is Jeremy Elder. I'm a staff product designer on GitLab's UX Foundations team. And this video is a quick walkthrough of using the MR widget components. You should be, I'm assuming that if you're watching this, you're probably familiar with the merge request report section, also known as the MR widget framework. If you're not, please follow the links below in the video description to get caught up and familiar with that. Today I was going to walk through two items. The first is just that you should review the framework and the epics. Even if you are familiar and have been on part of this process, I recommend reviewing just to ensure that you are up to date on the latest. And the second, which I'll spend more time in today, is the component use and file setup. So I'll jump right in. In the component library, the UI kit file in Pajamas, there's a new page under regions called merge request reports. In here you will find the framework, you'll find examples of the use, and all the componentry necessary to build out your own merge request widgets. This framework will eventually be ported over to Pajamas documentation in text form and then have the visuals embedded. So this will be stripped down a little bit and more concise in the UI kit. That way you have one source of truth and we'll be able to reference it from there. Examples are included. There's multiple different MR widgets in here that you can use as starting points, and we'll go from there. So first up, the components. The first one is this MR widget container. This is the object you'll want to start with always when using the widgets or making your own, unless you're copying from an existing one that's leveraging these components. And this container has the necessary border radius and border to contain the reports region. You notice it has this purple tint to it and this icon meant to indicate replace me. So what we're wanting to do here is to be able to use this as a placeholder and swap the components inside with the widgets that we need, the starting point that we need. I'll get to that in a minute. There's two things to highlight here. First is there's this overflow scrim. You notice as I click this on and off, it creates a little scrim, which is a gradient, goes from solid to transparent at the bottom of the object. This is an affordance to indicate scroll. On some of the widgets, when they're expanded, there's multiple line items for a report. And due to just screen real estate limitations, we limit those to a max height of 170 pixels in a window, and you can scroll within that. So including this scrim as part of this component allows you to turn that on and off and mimic that overflow in your layouts. And the next item in here is this layout vertical. This is what controls the number of widgets within this container. You see right now it is set to 1. The layout is vertical. You don't need to worry about changing this. The other option is horizontal. We don't have to change that here. Rows. You can see if I update this to 3 rows, back to 1, it changes. The default is 1. It goes up to 10. In any of the exploration I've worked on, I've not needed more than 10. If you do, you can put multiple containers together and adjust the border radius to be tight as you need. Next is the MR widget actions. This is kind of a standard placeholder action bar. There are items that account for the info, the downloads, and then a few placeholder tertiary buttons of the confirm variant. Those are present here and here. What you'll note about these is that they are placeholder. They can be changed as they are in the MR widgets for the smaller breakpoint, which then uses the default tertiary variant. Next up is the MR widget status. Several icons here. The ones with the highlight are meant to be the level 1. There's the loading, and then there's the second level 2 and the level 3 icons for both general status and the severity status. You can see over here all of those options, and then level 1 is a toggle true false where you can say, okay, I've got failed, but it's a level 1, so I can turn that on, etc. I'll show you that more in use. Next up is the MR widget expand. The purpose of this is just to quickly toggle on expand and collapse. It does nothing functionally to actually expand and collapse. It's just a visual indicator, but it's made a component so that you could easily toggle it rather than having to deep click into that icon, swap icons, etc. Next up is the MR widget. This is the component that will replace these instances here in that layout. And as I scroll through this, there are two different sizes, one to account for smaller breakpoints, one to account for larger. The smaller one uses the overflow ellipse navigation, and it has less padding. The larger one has the unfurled navigation and the padding. And then all the options are in here for the layout, whether it be for first child, second level, and then n+1 child, where the border is inset a little bit. Same for tertiary, except tertiary doesn't have the border, level 3. And there's options for both that have the section title and description and without it. Also making those toggles just to make it a little easier rather than having to always go in and turn on and off layers. It should help. Badge is also something that is optional, and that one's not set to toggle, but as a content property, you can go in and hide that. Lastly, navigation left, navigation right. These are just meant to represent placeholder areas for the left and right navigation in a layout. Where I've used those is in our examples. So you might have something over here where you want to see and demonstrate how responsive the MR widget actually is, and get a better sense of that behavior to represent. So if you click on this left, I can expand that. Click on the right, expand that. You'll see now the center content area has been adjusted to account for that. These are just placeholders to give you a sense of a layout and understand where things might wrap, where things might need to be truncated at smaller breakpoints, etc. Where this is potentially more critical is smaller breakpoints, where the sidebar actually takes over some of this content real estate and makes it potentially not so legible. So it gives you the opportunity to work through that, sort through that, determine how things are going to wrap, free flow, what type of text and language to use so that you can understand the impact of how these widgets are going to work in the greater layout. Once again, all these examples are part of the component library under the merge request reports page. You can find them there. All right, next up, file setup. I have an example file here that if I go over to assets, click on the library, you can see it's using the component library. Toggle that on and off. And you'll want to make sure that this is updated and pulling in the latest. The MR widget components are part of this, so they will be available to you. Excuse me. And what I've done is I've created 3 examples where I took screenshots from existing widgets on recent merge requests and dropped them in here. And I'm going to recreate these using the componentry to give you a sense of how to use it. I realized that if you own only one of these widgets, you won't be creating a full set like this. You'll probably just be addressing your own singular. But for the sake of the demo, I'll go through and create the ones that are impacted by the latest update to the region for the reports. Anything in the merge area, I'm going to ignore for now. That'll be covered in a separate effort. And then lastly, I'm not going to literally type every bit of content in here or mock that up. I just want to give you a general sense of how these components are used. I'll also highlight any bugs or anything I've encountered with Figma, which I know there are some that might show their head that have been reported. So we'll cross those bridges as they come and deal with that as appropriate. So first up, this example here, we have 3 reports. And I just create a frame. We'll just match up the size of the screenshot I took. And next up, I want to go over to my assets panel. And under the merge request reports, change it to list view. I'm just going to grab that container that we want to start with. I'll center that up, drop that in here. You'll note that this is set to hug contents. I can also set the responsiveness relative to the frame, so I can say, let's make this left and right, so that if I were to adjust this frame it responds to that. So responsive from the start. Since I'm going to be using creating 3 of these, I'm going to come in here and double click so I get to that layout vertical layer. I'm going to go in here and change this to 3. You notice this didn't update. That is the current bug that I've reported to Figma. The component itself, as you saw in the demo a few moments ago, when I changed the number of rows updates, this for some reason is not doing that. So what I'm doing here is simply going to say, I'm going to come into the layout vertical. I'm going to change HUD contents to fixed contents, then back to HUD, and you'll see that it resets. That is a bug. I've reported it, so apologies if that adds any friction to your effort, but that's how you can work around that. So now that I've got my 3 placeholders, I want to begin replacing them with actual widgets. So to do that, I'll come in and grab my MR widget. I'm going to use the shortcut of Alt and Command. And you can see that this is attached to my cursor as I drag. As I highlight over these are purple, indicating that they can be swapped. That's part of the reason I also use that purple tint to swap these. So I will just drop this on here. You can see that that's added. I'll do that for all 3 of these. Oh, I missed that one. There we go. I'm going to select all 3 of these, and then once again, these are set to fixed height. I'm just going to change them to HUD contents. Now you can see they've resized. Now, initially, these are all level 1 by default at the smaller breakpoint. Since I'm working at the larger breakpoint here, I want to go in and change that to this, where I adjusted that drop down to the larger breakpoint. You'll note that all the increased padding, the unfurled navigation is present. So now we've got a good start. If I click off of this, you can see that our border radius from the container is intact. I should be able to have this be responsive. All right. So now I just go in and update the content of each of these. Like I said, I'm not going to be exact, but we'll get it close here for the demo. You note that this top one can't be expanded. There's no additional actions or information. So I'm just going to click on these sections within. I'm just going to hit delete. When you do delete from a component, it just hides the layers. It doesn't actually remove them. So you can see that it's a non-destructive action. I come over to the status. Now I'm going to change that to a warning. So already you can see this first one is updated to match the framework. Second one is in a loading state. So we'll go back to status. We'll change this to loading. We're going to just do this here, and you notice there's a second line there. So that's for the meta information. More on that is covered in the framework for that region. I'm going to do a soft return here and type this out. We'll do some other text in here for formatting. Now you notice that this style is still using the UI paragraph O2 normal. We're wanting to do the small, so we'll choose that. Also, per the guides, this content should be a gray 700. So we're going to drop that in there. Lastly, we'll just format our text link here. We'll add an underline and make it our blue 500 link color. So now we have the text over here. I know it's shorter, but as mentioned, it's just for the demo. You notice that if I do any more returns, that everything here is reflowing and resizing. This would also be true if I were to resize this frame and that content wraps. It's going to continue to be responsive and increase in height. So there's 2 options for the security scanning report. There's to view the full report and to expand it. Expand is already in place. Full report, we've just changed to, or not view full report, we've changed to full report. So I'm going to come in here Once again, I'm just going to hide items that I don't need using delete. Come in here and type this out. All right, so the second one is done. Pretty simple. Lastly, is just this license compliance. So I can once again click into the status, change it to success, change the text. And lastly, over here, it's just full report, so I can hide any of the ones I don't need, add the one I do. And also, this one can't be expanded, so in turn, we will hide that. Now, if this were to be, this security one above were to be expanded, I could actually just come in here and toggle this on and off. And you can see how the icon changes when I do that. Also, I should note that this is where the options are exposed that I mentioned in the component variants and properties. So I can come in here and change this to a level 2. You notice that the content remains. I could make it a level 3. Content remains. I can toggle on the description or not, etc. You're always going to start with a level 1, followed by a level 2, followed by level 3. You'll never have anything out of order or skipping. So just a thing to note. So this example is done. Second example is the same thing, only in a mobile context. Now this is a screenshot of the existing layout where you can see the icons, the button wrapping. There's a lot of things here that could be improved. So as a starting point, I'm just going to copy what I've already done over here. I'll go ahead and paste it in. Move this frame over. I'll just take a look at the width, 357. So let's just match this here for the sake of the demo. You can see even by doing that, I'm already probably 90% of the way there. The only two things I need to do, or the one thing I need to do, is come in here and click on each one of these individually. And I'm going to choose a smaller breakpoint. Now when I do that, notice that the navigation or any extra actions that are part of this widget will be into the overflow nav, the more nav, the ellipse nav, whatever you might want to refer to that as in that action. And so those would be available in that. Once again, that's covered in the framework. But you can see the reduced padding has happened, the navigation has happened. So we have that. That was a pretty quick fix. And you can already see the improvements in the design and the layout for consistency with icon, with alignment, with the actions. And on mobile, this is probably about a 50% decrease in height just between existing and the new. So starting to gain some benefits there. Final example is a little more complex. You can see I have 1, 2, 3, ignoring this one, we have 3 parent level 1. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, level 2, and then multiple level 3. So one of the things, since that scrim that's part of the affordance for indicating the scroll is at the bottom of that main container component, and since we're limited to 10 rows at a time, this is an example of where I'm going to combine multiple of those containers to mock this up. And so I'm just going to start by taking a look at, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 items that I want to have as part of the initial container. So once again, I'll start by creating a frame. Over to my assets, drop in a container. Go ahead and center that. I'm just going to select all 10 rows for right now. And once again, remember that that workaround I had to do earlier where I changed it to fixed, changed it back to HUD contents. Now we see everything's there. The reason I changed it to 10 is just in case I counted wrong and need to add something. I can always hide these and and unhide them later if I need them. So that's another option. You don't always have to start with the exact count. You can do 10, hide the ones you don't need. And if you never need them, then that's fine too. So next, I'm just going to work through replacing each of these. I needed 8, so we'll start with that. We'll hide these two. You can see that the reflow happened. Once again, I'm going to select all of these. We'll set to hug contents. This is just something that Figma tends to do, even though by default those placeholder rows are set to hug contents. When I add and replace those, swap those components with the new one, for some reason it sets it back to fixed. So then I set it back to hug. Once again, we're at our larger breakpoint, so I'm going to change that. It's okay that this is overflowing the frame for now. So the first two are going to be our top level, so we'll leave those. The third one is where we get into a secondary. So I'll come into this, we'll change it to a level 2. Notice that there's no description, so we're going to toggle that off. We're going to leave the full border on, and the reason for that is this is the first child of this level 1, and that full border provides this, this clean edge right here. If I were to change this to not the full border, it insets, which is only reserved for n+1 level 2 items. So we'll keep that as a level 2. Since this has been expanded, I'm going to come over here. We're going to mark that as expanded so that we've just toggled this caret. Now or chevron, sorry. And we see that there. Now we have the rest of these. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items are going to be the level 3. Get back to my layers here, sorry. Change these to a level 3. We're going to turn the description off, except we do have it on the first one here. Turn it back on there. We'll hide the description. So now we're set up to start editing the content. The first one, failed to load code climate report, is in a warning state. So once again, I can click into the status. Move my avatar here. And we're going to change that to a warning. We'll just do this with our text for now. Now you notice there's this question mark help icon, and that doesn't exist under the new paradigm. And the reason for that is standardizing on info or help. A lot of these can be just straight up just info on what is going on, how to remedy, things like this that could be considered help or general information. So for now, we've chosen to do an info icon for these that is right aligned. So that is the only item that will be left on this code climate report. So I can go in here, hide those items, hide this. And you notice that everything is, the alignment's already set, so everything reflows and moves, shifts right as it should. This next item has quite a bit of meta information in here, so I'm going to skip adding all of that for right now. But what I will show you is that if I wanted to use our text classes to highlight the meta, those are all available. So you can easily come in here and for something like this, I could just make it bold. For these items, I can use the smaller text. It looks like they're also bold. There's more guidelines on the meta information in that document that's I alluded to earlier, so you can take a look there. You can adjust the colors, etc. So you can see that this is pretty flexible. And on this one, we have the view full report and collapse. So again, we're going to leave the collapse and hide the items I don't need. Change this to full report. All right, now we can get into our level 3. So you see this first level 3 here. Well, I'm sorry, I skipped level 2. Level 2 here, it looks like it's in a another warning. I'm not going to edit the text because we've covered that, but similar to a level 1, I get down, I know it's a lot of clicking, get down to that nested status, click that, we'll change it to a warning. You can see it lacks the highlight because it's a level 2. If I were to hit this level 1, it would keep it scaled in there, but it would use the level 1. We obviously don't need to do that. Badge is not present, so I'm just going to delete. That hides it. You can see once again we have just the help icon, which we're going to replace with the info. So level 2, just delete that. We've got our info icon. Like I mentioned, I'm not going to type out everything here. So let's jump to the level 3. Here's our heading here, or just our section title, new. Just do one of these. I could come in here, hide the badge, critical object. You'll notice that I'm not always doing these in order where it's left to right icon, whatever. You can do that however order you see fit, whatever you need to do to update your content. We'll get that in there. Go to our status. This looks like it's a severity critical. Now the only thing I haven't done here is accounted for the overflow, the scroll. So this is where it gets a little manual if you're mocking this up. I'm going to add just a little box here it's 170. That matches our height for the max height. If I line this up with this level here, that's the max height of what this can scroll. I'm just going to shrink up the component. It will crop this, which is nice. I can turn on that overflow. Now you see that slight gradient of that scrim is our overflow indicator. So that's on. And get rid of that. So we have this comped and approximated for that height. This is where I'm going to use an additional widget and a container to help mock up the rest of these, just to show how those might stack. So let's go ahead and go back over to our assets and drop in the container. We'll go ahead for now and just set that close by. And I'll do 1, 2, 3, 4 items in this one, just to round that out. Again, I'm not messing with anything in the merge. So 4, just do that little trick right now, since that's acting funny for us. All right. Sure, got those layers selected. Do HUD contents. We'll change them to the larger breakpoint. And it looks like all but one is a level 2. So we'll unclick that one. We'll make these a level 2. We'll turn off the title and the description. So already you can see how this is starting to shape up to match this. But if I were to put these together as is, the border radius is a problem. But we can fix that by taking this and just adjusting the necessary borders. Same with this one. All right, and now they align. So we have our indicator of our overflow. We have these stacked in there. We have the tint for the secondary. We have all of that in place. And then you could go in and further edit this content to your liking, as I've done on the other ones. One thing to note is that even though this content's repeating and repetitive, unfortunately, you can't just copy and paste and duplicate a widget here to easily redo that content. I suppose that you could take the widgets individually and do that if you had like a container of one, but then that would leave you to address all the border radius and etc. So I find that it's easier and more accurate to just go in one by one and edit that content as necessary. If I wanted to take something like this and make it into a responsive layout, or not responsive, but address it at the smaller breakpoint, I should be able to, let's set these both to left and right. If I come in here, let's set this to 375. See, that doesn't look so great right now. What I can do is select all of the widgets, change them to the smaller breakpoint. Again, I can do the same for this. Adjust my layout here. And now I have these laid out for a smaller breakpoint. So should be super easy. If there's anything that you encounter or have questions about, please follow up in the epic or one of the related issues. If there's any features missing, please do the same, and we will work through that from there accordingly. I appreciate your time, and best of luck creating your own widgets. Thanks.